Well, that is a wonderfully entertaining score. Thank you so much, Gerrit, for once again sharing with us uh, your attempts, or more than an attempt. It's a really great effort, and yeah, it's just improving my mood more and more for this for the work that's left to do on evaluating the remaining scores, of which there are quite a few. But I intend to uh, attempt in my own way to make an effort to complete the evaluation of the rest of the remaining scores by the end of this year, 2025. With once again apologies to you for the delay. As you may know, my health has been quite bad for the past couple of years. But I am currently undertaking a new treatment, and cross your fingers for me. Let's hope that it will result in some improvements that allow me to keep doing this. Okay, so just a few little comments. You probably noticed that this mock-up sounded possibly a bit better than what you might have had at home. One of the reasons why is that, let's see if I can pull this. Yeah, here we go. Let's take it up to here. In the original mix for this had the horns way high and the violins and strings and so on lower than the winds and so on. This is something that Sibelius just sort of assumes that that you'll want in your mock-up, but that I don't know, maybe you missed this, Gerrit, in my I'd sort of had a guide to scoring this and so on, and I really recommended that people boost their especially their first violins in this type of mock-up, because you really want the first violins to dominate, because they lead in this kind of symphonic late classical scoring. So that's what I've done. And you also probably noticed that this didn't quite work out, these trills. So I went into Sibelius and I corrected these trills so that they would work out as a whole as a tone rather than semitone trill. Or I think that it was ending up trilling at like an augmented second, right? So I've corrected all that, so that's why it sounds better in the mock-up, and the horns don't blare in places like this and so on. So it's more realistic to what a classical orchestra might sound like. Okay, so let's go straight into our evaluation criteria. And the whole question is, does the intro set the mood effectively? And I feel this is set up really nicely. You've got your clarinets and flutes in octaves, ba ba da da da, and also the horns. And this is just really, really nice. And here I can see you're really trying to stick mostly to what is possible with natural horns. Of course, there'll be the occasional stopped or half-stopped note on, like, sound B, for instance, and other places. And here you've got like you're going to bass clef on these low C's here. So yeah, it's a pretty good. I would say it's a pretty good attempt at not just being neoclassical, but being really scoring in the classical style for as much as you possibly can. However, there are some things that you're not taking into account. I think I can help you with, like if you want to go down this path and do more scoring in that style and so on, and just maybe some basic things about how instruments work and so on, and hopefully you have viewed some other videos of the previous Patreon entries from the participants from before I got sick, and maybe there's been a few dribs and drabs over the over the past couple of years. As you know, I've had some good spells in my health, and I've tried to catch up as much as possible and maybe get back on track. But then my health didn't quite last. And hopefully, that will not be the case this time, and I'll be able to finish them. So hopefully you've watched some of those other evaluations, and you have heard some of my admonitions about slurring and about phrasing and bowing and everything else. So I'll put a little bit of that in here, but I'll try to mostly stay to the evaluation criteria because that's pretty important. There are a few missing slurs here and there, like, right in here. Like, couldn't this have also had a slur on top? Or maybe you're worried about repeating the C in there and so on. You could have just made the C into a half note, right? Or, the bowing is very uneven here in the first violins, I would say. So there's ways of fixing that. All right, but let's get back to this intro. Does it set the mood effectively? And I think that it does. I think that it's a beautiful little chorale. As I mentioned before with Kenneth's score, this is kind of it's a nice moment to score in transcribing Beethoven, because he was very fond of a kind of a folk-like wind serenade kind of approach. Not so much like the Mozart Grand Partita or anything, but more in the quality of like the little folk bands that he loved so much. Some of whom, I think there was this one little folk band that used to play at a village on the edge of town that was very much influenced by, or possibly had in their ranks players from his part of the world, from Bonn, up on the Rhineland. And so they came down and they played all these little ditties, and he loved them. And he would just go to that place and sit and watch and listen and work some of it into his symphonies, or work things in that style. So this is a really great way to start this off, right? I think if you're gonna slur over things and have everything be so smooth in the horns and so on, you can probably tie repeated notes and or make this into a half note and so on. I mean, I think that you can make things more cushioned and more smooth, right? And you might want to break the slur here, though. Da da. Do you know what I'm saying? And then a little slight breath. Da da. Right? But other than that, very, very nice. So no big issues here, I don't think. Now, the next concern is, does the melody start with elegance? I mean, it does. I mean, the transcription here is just really strings only. And, is there a natural flow? There is. It's nice the way that you have, you've interpreted this. And we've got this sort of realization. It's a little strange here. I see like you're harmonizing. It's fine. It's a nice little touch. However, I'm not so fond of this whole, up, down, up, down, up, down. I think that the players might want to be a little bit more regular. Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. So I think that just flows more easily. But of course, like this, this little doubling here of the first clarinet with the violins, it has a wonderful edge to the tone. And then, as you'll hear, as I mentioned before, these low C's in the F horns, the really actually sounding low F, will and I think this is intended to be new notation, right? So old notation. So it'll sound up rather than down, and that's exactly perfect for this. Now, is there a natural transition to octaves here? It's beautifully done. Yeah, the way that you bring in the violas and so on. And do you expand without clogging up? I mean, I think that this does the job right in here on the second violins, and then the bass works pretty well. I think that that whatever I mentioned here in terms of the bowing scheme for the first violins should be applied to the violas and cello. So I would say just go back and try out my idea on that, on the slurring here, and maybe here, and just see if that makes more sense. Okay, and if not, then you don't have to. It's just my idea as an orchestrator. So the next concern here is there a contrast with the theme in terms of like the color of tone of like whatever is stating the melody? Is there a contrast between lines? Is there any harmonic support needed? All right, so you chose to add harmonic support here in the horns. It's beautiful. It's exactly perfect. It's great. All natural pitches for your natural horns. It's a very nice job. Okay, and then here, da da dum, and then ba 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 bum, or da dum. I see that you're trying to take the edge off here, to not go all the way up to the B flat. But I'll tell you something: there's absolutely no problem for bassoonists, for any decent bassoonist, to go, to play it exactly how it was scored. Not a B flat, but a C. C, E, G, B flat, right? Because here you're giving away the inverted seventh, right, of your dominant chord. So that's just completely unnecessary. It's almost like you're imitating what happens here. And then, by the way, this can go up to the A and then jump down to the A with no problem at all. So, but here it's like you're imitating this by giving away the last note at the end, but it's supposed to be different, right? If you take away the tonic of the dominant, if you take away the root of the dominant here in your broken chord, then I feel that it lessens the impact, because the whole point is da 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 ba 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 ba, right, ba, which is it's like it is leading us to the A, right, da 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 da, right. So don't give away the game too much. Thank you for preserving the leggermente directions. I think they're incredibly essential. But, there's a contrast between these lines. There isn't a contrast between these lines, but it's okay. It's probably more in keeping with Beethoven anyway. There is no contrast between these lines, though, right? It's like, there's nothing. You're carrying forwards, and it's perfectly fine. Just be aware that there's less freshness to it, right? I mean, there's a freshness here in that you have started with flute as the flute, and then in octaves with clarinet and horns and so on, and bassoons, and even an octave lower. And you have this big rich wind band kind of a sound, and then you go to first violins, and so you're keeping the continuity, and that is admirable. But you just lose the ability to contrast even more, right? But don't worry about it. You don't have to. Now, the next question, is there an emphatic color of line? Well, with crescendo, dum, and then da, da, yes, I like this more regular bowing right in here. Dum. Yeah, and the harmonic density sets up what happens, because you're not really playing this, you're not really interpreting this anything more than what is scored in the original piano part, and with maybe just a little bit of extra bass here, and some thickening by the horns, which you'll notice, right? It isn't so blasting as it was in your original mock-up. So I think that, with this kind of more low-key approach, I totally approve. Okay, I think it's fine for you keeping it like more in a classical era type of feeling. And then you get your contrasts in here. Contrast of texture rather than dynamic. Keeping this soft is fine. You could have decided to go with just like a contrast between smooth and abrupt, right? Or non-legato, right? Dun da da or dun da dun dun dun, right? So that's one possible idea to kind of keep more variance in it, which does not need any articulation marks. Does not need to be. It was just, if you change your mind, decide to go that way. You don't need staccatos. It's just simple to have just simply stated notes. Bum bum bum, if you like. And then this is just really lovely the way that you interpreted this. Bum bum. And I don't think you need this dovetailing. Done. I think it takes away from the contrast if you add this little chord here. Then ba da da dun. This I approve of though. Dun ba da 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 dum, especially because the strings can take off from there and go into this, right? And then bum bum dum ba bum bum. Right. Just one little thing is that having these pitches so high on the horn may it may sort of the tension of these notes up here when you're trying to do all of this delicate kind of Mendelssohn type stuff I just feel that there's a chance of it lessening the impact of these little flurrying strings, kind of like snowdrops, right? But let's get back to some of my criteria. Octaves. So it's, once again, like you decided to like not continuously search for different instruments to carry the theme. You're sticking with your first violins, and that's totally fine. But maybe you missed an opportunity for this to be stated in other instruments. But this is a nice way of dealing with the whole dovetailing or trading off problem, since if you don't really need to do that, and just go yep up, it's great. But we kind of miss that kind of the kind of yodeling sort of kind of a sound. This is nice though. The cellos walking down with our clarinets and oboes. Once again, just be careful about making this all too heavy, and taking away from the impact of these just very lightly fluttering strings in here. Here's almost a place where I would almost want everybody else to be pianissimo except for the first and second violins. After having just talked a lot about not mixing up dynamics and so on, there are exceptions, right? And so here's one. I would just especially with the horns, I'd want to keep these elements in the background a little bit, at least until until we have the things open up, right? Now, thinking ahead to widening gap is something that I recommended, but you're taking a slightly different approach than what I expected. Right. So I would almost say you don't really need accents on the first and third pitches. Where you need the accents is on the it's just like on this ba da 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 da, and I don't think you need it anywhere else. I mean, it's you're putting so much weight on that across all of your lower strings, right? And you're trying to kind of keep the, you've got this wonderful offbeat, it's real Beethoven like, bum 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 bum. This is nicely done. Same thing with the horns. Yeah, but I just really don't think you need this. This. I don't think you need any of these accents. What I have a real concern with is this. I just don't feel that this is very natural under the hand, under the bow of the player. Da 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 da. I just, it's just really more like concerto material than it is like section. I mean, of course, section players get stuff like this, saying like Mahler, and I mean, there are all kinds of things where the section is really asked to, to put on their thinking cap or to really, do some heavy studying. But I feel that it's just like it's too much work for what you want to do here. What if you just cut these repeated Ds, because you've already got one of the Ds here, right? And you've got this little fluttering thing below, yada da 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 da. So you don't even need your first violins to even state these Ds. You just have them going da 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 da. Do you see what I'm saying? And that way you could have like 16th note slur to 8th note staccato, right? And I think that you get the effect that you need. Why don't you try that out? Just make another copy of this file, and then just go in there and just cut these 16th notes, and then make the destination note of this slur staccato 8th note, and then just see if that makes things clearer, and take away these accents here, because it's just like putting too much. You're putting a lot of weight on your on your winds here, where this is just not coming through very much, right? And once again, like maybe even make, like I said before, just make everything else pianissimo except for these fluttering strings, and then here the crescendo you can normalize things to more, just everybody playing forte. I don't think you need to go a duet here quite yet. A single horn was going to have enough impact, right? I mean, if we look, yes, you're going to eventually need your two horns, but you don't really need them yet, all right? Sorry, my page up and down doesn't go to just a full page on this. I got to figure out why. Okay, but all those caveats aside, I kind of like this. You're not ticking the wrong boxes for me so much. All right, so yeah, so da 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 da. Yeah, and just like and here, like you want to know where accents could go is right here on the beginning of each beam group. I think that, and then especially here, just it doesn't have to be both, just the first one. And the same thing here. I would put an accent here. And this is all really nice here. I don't think you need tenuto, but if you were to add tenuto, it would be like this. Where you should put it is here. But, or you should just, if you really are dead set on tenutos, like you can, hit the wrong thing on my keypad, right? You could do it like that, but you don't need that. You totally do not need to go tenuto there. That's my feeling. Yeah, because I almost feel like the tenuto, the kind of blocky sounds interfere with this really nice dotted rhythm here. Dun 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 dun. You know what I mean? That's a real Beethoven kind of a build. It's nicely done, really. And I love these repeated notes here in in your bassoons and middle to lower strings. Yeah. Right, and then here we're getting to here we get to the trill, which you decide to sort of reinterpret by having like triplets going to triplets. Yeah, and that's all fine. It's just it's the way you want to interpret it. Yeah, and then the G G C. That's nice. Yeah. You could have maybe emphasized this by having bassoons a deux down here and then going to octaves here as the cellos and double basses jumped up. That might be one way of maintaining the upwards motion of the bass, because the way that you've scored it, it's not quite as emphatic, right? By having your bassoons just playing triplets here in on the same G octaves. And this is lovely right here. So, and I almost feel like this is clearer. Do you know what I'm saying? Just kind of showing that both voices get a trill on them in terms of notating it. So, anyways, just watch out for that. I've even seen some editions where the publisher stuck the trill line like this. They put it like really close to the other note, even though it kind of gets in the way of the reading. Maybe like putting it between putting it in have the trill line go into the space, so it doesn't mess up the or even, let's see if I can do something here. Okay, just turn the maybe they would even score something like this. Do you know what I'm saying? Something closer to it, just so that that it was really obvious that both voices were trilling. Still, it's very, very cool. I mean, I almost wish that like you had more to play with, almost like this could be doubled by by strings, and maybe some of this could have been covered by your second violins, and there could be some sort of reinterpretation, reshuffling of some of these parts. Anyways, but it's still really fun. And you can hear that, like with that improved mix, it probably sounds a lot better than you might have heard in your. So don't be afraid to mess with the levels a little bit if they're not really respecting the roles of certain instruments. Of like first violin's always taking the lead and being the most prominent voice and so on. All right. So now we're getting towards the C section. And this is really lovely. It just Beethoven developing his material. Yeah, I mean, like this super smooth kind of a quality. I would say that if you're going to slur over two beats, then you should slur over two beats here. Da, 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 da. What if you slurred per beam grip? Da, 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 da. Right? Maybe that's a way of making the everything a little clearer. And once again, you don't need a deux horns here at all. Just a single horn. You don't have to involve the second all the time. And this is really lovely. This coming in over the top with flutes and clarinets. Ba 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 da da da. And then with the cellos coming in below. If you really felt that there wasn't enough support here, you could have thrown in a little bassoon. And this is all very cool, like divisi pizzicato and so on. And I just feel it's a nice way of if you feel that the pizzicato is too thin, you can always once again double that. Say the oboes are doing nothing important and they are right in the range of the second violin part. They could be playing it staccato, right? And then same thing, like these C's could be played by the by the bassoon, just going doink, 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 giving a little bit of support to there. So anyway, but it's it's a lovely interpretation, and then ba-dum. What if it? Yeah, I mean, what if? Keep in mind that the piano is a percussive instrument, right? And the effect that Beethoven is going for is more like note, 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 right? He's connecting the notes with the pedal or with his phrasing, with the fingering, but that doesn't mean that you have to slur, right? What if you just went? What if you took the slur out? Ba ba bum, and then that all of this super smooth slurred stuff could be a separate idea. Da 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 da. Right? Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah, no huge problems there. And then this is nice, like throwing in just a little bit of lower and middle strings underneath. Bum, bum. Okay, I do have a problem with this. Bum, 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 bum. What if the violins had the C at the beginning, right? Just kind of dovetailing from the flute and bassoon, because it just feels a little forced the way that it is now, and it also feels a little forced not being slurred. I love this though, that I recently did a video about triple octave wind duos 2 octaves apart, right? Sort of melodic duos like this. So this is right in keeping with that whole Beethoven vibe. This is very, very nice. Yeah, so this is a little tricky, the way that this is scored. All right. And then this is fine though. The A is just sitting there, as an open string, so that this is all possible to do. Yeah, no obvious stuff in here. This high A here, really, I mean, do you really need that? I mean, it's already covered by the clarinet, right? So there's just really no need for the bassoon to just be squawking way up high there. I'd probably unison A would be better going to an octave D. It's just, this why kill your players, right? Just don't make them work so hard. And I almost feel too that, like, you've got your violas here. They're kind of like, they're only playing a single line. This could be played divisi, and then you could add more cello support to what's going on here in the bassoons, right? Because I think that the bass function here is getting lost with these big tutti chords. Watch out for the bass function. See, this is really great right in here, right? If in a simple thing like this, you don't want to pull the bottom, you don't want to pull the rug out from under people. All right. So one more screen here, because your commitment ends pretty much right around here. But I have to say, Gerrit, that you submitted the full score, and wow, I mean, and I'm just going to show everybody, you have these great ideas. Well, I wish that you had joined as, say, like a dotted brev or longa supporter, because I would love to look over these things and to talk about them with you. There's so many wonderful things that you do in here. Some of it is based on what you did before, of course. But yeah, so cool. So many things I would love to give you advice about, but we don't have time. We'll just stick to what is in your commitment. All right, and then we're kind of back to the response after these massive chords. I just don't know if you really need all these triple stops and so on. I think you'll get a better sound with just like really with double stops at the most, right? Because you've already got the double stops here in the violas, and I mean, it's just best to keep it simple, I think. And then and why does the top G here have to be so screamingly high in the bassoon? Wouldn't it be better to have the octaves lower, and that way you could double what's going on in the double bass down here? I think you could rethink some of this harmony a little bit. Okay, now this is really great. This duh. If you're going to slur this, then you should slur this, right? And then same thing here. Duh. All right. So my next question was, further contrast, and you do that really, really, really nicely here, just like the oboes and the and first violins, and then you drop out, and then you have flutes come in on top of this. Keep in mind that some of this is going to get a little bit absorbed. The listener won't be all that aware of the flute until about right here. Right, and then octaves. It's very powerful the way that you have it scored. You might not even need the violas to come in. Well, or you might not even need the second violins. I don't know. It just feels like a lot of weight, even though it's very soft. So I see what you're doing here. Da 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 da. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, why couldn't this have started higher? Oops, excuse me. Why couldn't this have started higher, just like it is in the score? Do you see what I'm saying? I think you lose the whole step down effect that Beethoven has got. He sort of drops. It keeps dropping lower and lower and lower each time, right? So I think we miss some of that. Like the way that it's scored, it's mid-range, and then it's mid-range with a kind of an oomphy bottom on it, and then it's, then it goes into this sort of smooth. I don't know if I've seen this before, like the entire string section being asked to participate in these smooth runs and so on. No, I'm not so sure that the lack of octave contrast really, I see the way you're mid-range and then you pop in this thing up above, but it's not going to be that effective because of the tendency of such thick strings to absorb the flute tone at piano dynamics, right? So there are some problems in here. But this is cool. Clarinets and bassoons, it's just a touch of horn. Once again, you don't need a duet. Yeah, just keep it simple. Yeah, and then a little bit of, and this is kind of cool. Yeah, and then you naturally go back into this. Yeah, I mean, about the only thing I would say is keeping things so much in the strings, then when you go back to the strings, carrying the melody and doing the accompaniment and everything else, it just doesn't really feel like there was a fresh changeover. Do you know what I mean? We're back to the strings, and then your intro, going back over your intro in the strings, you are really kind of playing strings again, right? And so we're just really staying in strings for a long, long, long time, and in the middle register for a long, long time because of the way that you left out the higher register before, right? So it's all of these proportions are things that Beethoven worked out in his sonata, right? Because his hands naturally just kind of jump all over the place and go all, it is part of his kind of bravura playing. Bravura with an accent on the bravado, right? Because he would have to accept challenges from other improvising pianists, and then they would sit there and duel each other. There's a really great video of Beethoven taking on, I think it's Steibelt, and Steibelt, or could be another pianist, but anyways, sits down at the piano and plays something very conventional, but would have been considered to be exciting and diverting for the masses. And then Beethoven just takes his theme, tosses it on the floor, and then has the entire thing memorized and starts improvising on it, almost like his Diabelli improvisations, these Diabelli variations. So Beethoven had this sense of bravura playing that made it into a lot of his sonatas with his hands going in all different registers and everything. And that gives us the opportunity to base our orchestrations of those, or in transcriptions of those piano things, in ways that like bring out contrasts of color and register, right? So just really be careful about taking away the changes of register, is what I would say, and also putting too much weight in the middle of the orchestra all the time, right? And it keeps the some of your really great ideas, keeps some of the freshness out of them, right? So you want more freshness in them, is all I would say. So that would be my only big cautions about the way that you're going. But like I would say, this is one of the more nicely honed traditional interpretations, and I'm sure that in some cases where you were being a little conservative about registers of instruments and so on, you were probably thinking, well, this is maybe more in keeping with the way that it might be played, as a classical orchestral piece. So fair enough. Anyhow, it's wonderful to get a score from you, and once again, apologies for the delay. And this is usually the part where I say, great to get a score from you. Really looking forward to what you will do next year when I have my next challenge. But I just don't know when I'm going to be able to do another challenge again. It just depends. If I bounce back by the beginning of next year, and I'm feeling really good by the middle of next year, and just like my personal situation and just the way the community is vibing, and maybe the world situation and so on. If it all lines up together, I might be able to do another one next year, but I just really don't know. So please do not take it amiss, anybody out there. If I am a little bit cagey about it and I'm not really sure. I had such great plans, like for 2024 and 2025 of what I had planned to do, and I was starting to put some contacts through about different ways that we could do the challenge that would result in even more exciting results and possibilities for participants. And so, but I just, I am limited by the amount of energy that I can put into things these days. So just kind of survival is where I've been focused. So thanks everybody for understanding that, and for not getting after me too direly about my need to, to recover and to take things one step at a time. All right. And there are so many wonderful scores to come over the next few weeks, if I can keep my energy going, that I think it will have been worth the wait. I hope it will. Thanks everybody, and really wonderful score. I really enjoyed it.